Hey there, welcome to my little video where we are going to create a seamless pattern in Procreate together. I'm going to go through a lot of steps that this is kind of half tutorial, kind of just a draw with me video, but I'm basically creating a seamless pattern that uses a lot of wildflower elements that I have already drawn. So all I've done so far is create a canvas in Procreate, and I'm importing all of those graphics. I created them in Vectornator, which is a vector software that is free on the iPad. So just quickly pulling those into the file. This is a square canvas, and I make sure the DPI is at least 300. Doesn't really matter what the dimensions are so much. If you are looking for a bigger or smaller canvas, that's up to you. Okay, so my whole plan for this pattern is a pretty simple one. I have a bunch of wildflower drawings, and I want to tile them around and put a colored background, and that is it. I do lots of other patterns that are a bit more complicated, but I thought for this video, let's just keep it a little simple, and I'll use all these pictures I've already drawn. So what I've done here, and it's a little bit hard to see, at this point my camera's not super focused, but it does fix later. At this point I've turned on the grid, and I'm just kind of tiling these flowers in a bit of a pattern that later I realize doesn't look super natural, and I do rearrange them, but the first step is always getting all your designs out on the page. And I'm using 10 different wildflower drawings that I've done. These are like flat vectorized pictures. And then you can see a little bit closer, they are pretty cute little illustrations within a limited color palette, which I think is very important for making a really cool pattern. You have to pick your palette and stick with it. One important thing to note here is that none of these pictures are going off the edge of the page, and I'm about to show you why. So first I'm adding a layer with a background color behind all of these flowers. That's just, I'm going to pick the real color later, but I've grouped it and then duplicated the group, and that is going to let me transfer this pattern to a different perspective. Basically, I'm dragging one copy of that layer up and the other one down to meet at the middle. And that's going to show me the next segment of this pattern to fix the gaps that are in between. I actually saved 2 flowers that I didn't place yet in the design and open them up here and just drag those layers up top. There it is. And reposition it that way. I'm still sticking to the grid at this point, which is not a great look. You can see that the flowers are starting to form diagonal paths across the page, which isn't really what I'm going for. I think on a big scale it would end up looking a little bit weird, so I will fix that in a bit. But first, arrange those flowers. I'm also trying to keep in mind the color composition and balance of the shapes when I'm doing this, so not putting too much of the pink in one place. Some of these wildflowers have very tiny pink buds that you can't really see this zoomed out. Now I'm ready to kind of move on to the next phase, so I'm just going to squish all the layers together, but I'm deleting out the backgrounds because I want to work on moving the flowers around individually without messing up the background. So it's a bit of a weird process, just but deleting the groups. And then all the flowers are there with no separate background layer. And I will just pinch those together to create one solid layer. There you go. So now you can see all the flowers in the same layer. And I will use I'm going to turn off the grid because I need to stop working on that grid. And then just use the lasso tool to circle the flowers and then move them around a little bit. And this is a good opportunity to just kind of play with your design. I do this fairly commonly in any of these sort of scattered patterns. Some of the patterns that I do are really rigid and geometric, like they're on a very particular scale. So once you've moved it around and done that thing where you create multiple layers and adjust it to different points in the repeating pattern, it's hard to just grab it and move like I'm doing here. So this is just an advantage to this style of pattern. And I'm not touching any of the flowers that go off the page here, because if I moved one half, I'd mess up the seamlessness on the other half on the top or bottom. So just moving around the ones that are free floating at this point. And now I'm ready to move on to another section. So doing the same thing, adding in a background layer just so that I can move all the edges. If you don't have a background layer, basically it will crop that layer to whatever the drawings are on it. I'm probably not explaining this very clearly, but like I said, this is a bit more of a draw with me than a tutorial. So now I've moved this to the left and right and working at another vantage point of the pattern, deleted the background, and we're just wiggling around these flowers again. It's pretty simple. I considered adding in other elements to this design, and now I'm just picking the background color, which is going to be a beautiful yellow. I thought about other elements, dots or smaller flowers to fill in the gaps, but I kind of like the simplicity of this, and I have a little bit of the too much gene where I tend to do too much detail. So it's nice to rein it in a little bit and stop when I think it's already looking very pretty. Now the last step that I'm going to do here to just check in how this pattern is looking is I'm creating 5 versions of the same design, making the 5th one invisible just as like a backup, and then I'm going to shrink the 4 layers down to quadrants of the design. Unfortunately, I decided to work back to front on these layers, so it doesn't show up until the last layer, so I'm still learning how to do a really good tutorial. Please bear with me, but here you go. Ta-da! Now you can see how the pattern tiles. And as I was looking at this, I thought it's still a little bit diagonal looking, so I am going to work a little bit further on this design in a separate document. Because I don't want to mess it up too much, I'm just going out and duplicating the file, and I will make some adjustments in this one, a duplicate of it, so if I decide that I've messed it up, I can go back and fix it. So I went back to the single tile version, and I'm just going to use the lasso tool again and move around some of these flowers. And I think the issue I was having was that some of the skinny ones were a little bit weirdly weighted. I think these flowers are kind of divided into 2 categories. One were flowers with blooms and others were tall skinny ones. They're all like wildflowers, so a lot of them are tall and skinny, and I organized them in a way that I don't think the weight distribution of each illustration was right. I don't know, that's just my thinking of it, but I think what I did here actually fixed it, and again I am tiling it to take a look, with the last one being the big reveal. There we go. I think it is a bit of an improvement. It does minimize the diagonalness a little bit, and here I'm just comparing 1, 2, flipping back and forth. It is pretty hard to notice looking back at it now, but it mattered to me, so I deleted the one that I didn't like. And now I'm going to make a couple more copies of this. I want to just kind of make a few versions so that I can preview it to myself. So I've made one version that is the full tiled, and then the other one that is the small single tile. I'm just deleting the extras here. And I'm going to make a green version as well, because I had this feeling in my head that there's going to be a reason to do a dark version as well. So I ended up picking a green from the color palette. I just selected it from one of the flowers and then picked a darker shade in the same range. And I'm just playing around with it. But I think the dark green looks quite nice, and it's a good complement to the yellow. Typically when I do a collection, I'll do a ton of different patterns, so this is maybe just the start of a bigger collection that features just this one pattern in 2 colorways. But as you see when I preview it here, I think it looks really nice, and it's a very different vibe with the green. The leaves really pop more in it. I think it looks really pretty. So going back, I'm going to duplicate this one and just create a single tile version for my preview. And now I'm going to export all 4 of these designs. I've put them in a stack here, but I'm going to export them because I want to save them to my iPad and then create a new design with all 4 of them, just as a little preview that I'm going to put on, probably on social media. And I usually add some text over it on Canva to make it like a post to explain what it is people are looking at. But I am just importing those 4 tiles here into this new blank design, and I will tile it like before, but just going to make sure that their colors are not beside each other for contrast purpose. And when I'm done here, you kind of can really appreciate how cute the 2 colorways are. I'm very happy with it, and I'm just checking in the middle here. That's where you can always see if there's a mistake, but I made them all fit. So that's my little pattern, not quite a tutorial, but that's how I make them on Procreate if I am going to be doing a pattern, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and please do subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. See ya!